Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Lens. This is Jake along with Scott, and we are continuing our celebration of Bourbon Heritage Month and our 5-year anniversary. And today we are joined by Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Famer, Trey Zoeller, founder of Jefferson's Bourbon. So Trey, thank you again for joining us. This is your second appearance, episode 72. We were in the throes of COVID the last time we chatted, so great to have you here.
It's great to be here and actually live and not doing it from afar as we had to do during those crazy times. So
that's when we
glad that's in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, that's when we were trying to figure out how to do all these remote recordings.
Yeah, I mean, that was early on. I think that was one of the first, 8 to 10 podcasts that have done. And there's been a lot of change, with Jefferson's over that course of 3 years. I mean, May 25th, 2020 is when the podcast came out. And by damn, has the bourbon industry just exploded since then. We knew it was exploding then, but it just continued to explode now. So, someone who's been in the industry, for forever, it seems like, what's it like to see the continued trajectory of just overall bourbon production in America?
It never ceases to amaze me. You have to remember when I started back in 1997, there were 8 distilleries, one of which wasn't even selling bourbon in the United States. 2 other ones were only producing one label, and they weren't producing much because they had so much aged inventory at the time.
Yeah.
So, I see, including us, all these distilleries going up and, expansion after expansion. It's amazing. I remember it was only a few years ago that they were announcing there's as many barrels as there are people in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And now there's well over 3 times.
I know. It's nuts.
It should be, we said this, it should be a birthright in Kentucky.
Yeah.
You get born in Kentucky, you get a barrel and slap your name on it.
That's what happens in my family.
Yeah.
Have a kid, you get a barrel.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a hell of an investment. What they don't realize, it depends on how old it gets and when they sell it or if they drink it. I would be the investor in the family. So Trey, if you're looking to adopt, I'm open.
You're a little old for adoption.
I can emancipate. I'm good.
I just moved 2 of my kids into college this week, and when they were born, I both put a barrel away for each one of them. So when they turn 21, they get a barrel full of 21-year-old juice.
Oh, that's a hell of a whiskey gift. I poured your own at Michter's for my son.
You're gonna keep it in a bottle for 21 years.
Yep, that's it. It doesn't age.
Just keep it away from direct sunlight.
Direct sunlight. It's luckily in a box, and there's no sunlight that does touch it. And just hope that the cork doesn't taint. That's that's
what you get. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Maybe I'll test it along the way. Dad's test.
Exactly.
So one of the things that's really interesting, and you hit on it, right? You have a great partner in Pernod, right? And one of those things is whiskey expansion. So when they came along the way and said, "Hey, let's build a distillery," what was your reaction to that as someone who has built their reputation and brand off a lot of sourcing and blending yourself to say, "Hey, we're going to make a lot of whiskey"?
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited about it. We have, not by design. When I started this 26 years ago, the idea was to, I was buying, and I didn't realize how inexpensively I was sourcing great old juice at the time. But my idea originally was to sell enough to go ahead and fund a distillery. And that certainly wasn't going to happen the first 10 years in business. We weren't selling very much. And even the distilleries, you look at all the distilleries that have come along today that they built the distillery. It's a bad business model. It really is. Building the distillery is the cheapest part of it.
Yep.
Then you got to lay down enough liquid. And then the most expensive part is you got to market it if you're going to do something on scale.
Yep.
Everybody loves an allocated item. It's very easy to sell an allocated item. But if you're trying to build a brand, you got to invest in it.
Yep.
So for them to come in as enthusiastically as they have and dig into their pockets as much as they are, we're building a state-of-the-art distillery that's going to be the greenest distillery ever built. And we're doing it right. And it's exciting to be able to really control everything, to be completely vertically integrated and not have to rely on third parties for anything.
Yeah.
It is going to be, for us, a real treat. So I piece things together along the way as need be, and we've been able to make it work. We've probably benefited from that because we haven't been limited to what we made ourselves 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. So as just the knowledge of the consumer expanded, we were able to tap into different things and really, we've got well over 30 different expressions out now, and we're able to do some different things. So I love where we're ending up, and the journey that we had to get here wasn't exactly like you would draw it up on on the chalkboard, but we've made it work and learned a lot along the way.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty crazy. We're sitting here looking at some of the voyages and some of the different finished casks, but it's cool to see the expressions exchange and grow and develop over time. And one of the things is voyages, and we'll get there and we'll talk about one of the new releases that will have already come out when the podcast drops. But for you, as you move into this role of distillery and distiller, what's your role going to be as the distillery comes online? Are you going to be in there creating the liquid? Are you going to be out there being the face of the brand? What does that look like for you?
So I've never been a distiller. I don't know how to distill. I don't really want to know how to distill. There's plenty of people that do and know how to do that and do it right. So one of the things that I've done always since day one is try to take what's been put into the barrel and then manipulate it once it's in the maturation process. So we really started off sourcing originally, and we've been contract distilling for well over 20 years, having distillers make our recipe, putting it in our barrels to our specs at our proof points. So we've been able to work with all those different variants. But so in that case, in that instance, my role won't change a lot. I'm not a production manager. I'm more of a blender. That's what I was from day one.
Yeah.
We didn't really talk about it, but Jefferson and Jefferson's Reserve, from day one, we started blending 4 different blends together.
Yeah.
And we didn't talk about it because back then, blended whiskey was a total dirty word. Nobody talked about blending, and there really was very little blending going on back then. And when you did, people thought about blended Scotch whiskeys with GNS and caramel coloring, vanilla extract, and all that good stuff. So when we did talk about it, we married barrels. And to me, as I said, we've got over 30 expressions. Those are still the most difficult for me to put together day in and day out, because I rely on my tongue for that. So we've got one base bourbon that comprises about 65% of the total, and then 2 to 3 other bourbons going in there to directionally always keep it in the right spot. But if I like one better than the batch that I use as our control, I'll go for that one for that batch the next time I'm going back to that control. So I'm more of a blender and then whiskey maker, because I'm always making up new, different types of product to put into the bottle.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that makes sense. And why get out of your swim lane, right? Keep doing what brought Jefferson's here. Like,
exactly.
And I think it'd be fun to play distiller for a day, singular. Yeah. And just
until the buttons and bells and whistles start chiming at you, and you're like, "Oh God, what am I needing?"
Right, somebody help! Engineers that know, they won't know what to do when the red light goes off.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody come in and help me.
Yeah.
What we will do, probably more than what we've done in the past, is play around with what we're doing with the mash bill. And I think it was Voyage 28 or 29 where we did our New York edition, where we stopped in New York and cut our ocean product down from 125-ish proof down to 98 proof with New York water. And that was a total eye-opener for me. Yeah. We did this specifically for the New York market, that we were asked to do something special for them. But I've never had any bourbon that was distilled with one source and cut with another one. And the difference that made was huge, not just little nuances. It was huge. And when you think about it, it's kind of the last component that hasn't been explored. And when you think if you're dropping something from 125 proof to 98 proof, let's call that 22-23% of what's in the bottle is that water.
Yeah.
And I mean, what an eye opener! Something like that can make such a drastic difference. And that New York water is known for, it's not coming out of the Hudson River. It's actually from an aquifer 125 miles away.
Yeah.
Up in the Adirondacks. And it's very mineral-y, and it's what makes the great pizza and bagels. That's why you can't get a good bagel outside of New York, according to New Yorkers.
Let's say.
But, we had that same exact product that we took past New York and brought it down to Kentucky and cut it. And the difference between those two with that one variable was gigantic.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you don't think about it because every distillery tour you go on, and we just got back from Jack Daniel's, limestone water, baby. That's what makes the best bourbon and whiskey in the world. Limestone water. So like to hear the difference. But on the counterpart, we just went to dinner with the Coors family, pre Blue Run News. And they were talking about tankering in Rocky Mountain water, right? And how that's different, right? And so it is interesting that people are starting to explore the cut water, which is very unique, because a lot of people don't realize. I mean, these whiskeys are coming out 120, 130 proof. To get them down to 100 or 95 or 98 or wherever you want to land, that's a good chunk.
Yeah. And then like what they call it, slow water reduction, like where you're adding it slowly so it's not breaking apart the molecules, compounds. Yeah, that's more chemistry that I need to know. But
no, I mean, but it is. I mean,
it's true though. It makes a difference. You want to have those molecules and coming back together as well. Slower process where you're not shocking it. It does make a difference.
Yeah, you're not just taking a hose and just like
just turn on the water, just dump it in.
The blend is here. All right, we need 3 gallons of water. All right, here's your garden hose. You're good. No, this a little more science than that.
So those bells and whistles that you look for on the those distillers.
So remind me, where is the distillery going in? It's
in Lebanon.
Lebanon. Okay, so then you're gonna have some good distillery neighbors.
We're going to have some great distillery neighbors and some great cooperage neighbors.
Yeah, true too. Yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so you're not far from Loretto. Yeah. Obviously, Limestone branches there, and then
Limestone branch butts up to our distillery. So we're right there. We'll be neighbors.
You and Steve and B. Beam, good people right there. Yeah. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Bullett's next distillery is out that way.
Bullett's out there, and Willett's new distillery is not going to be far.
Okay. So Lebanon's like I feel like that was like the next juncture on the like Bardstown-ish area.
It's a little ways out from Bardstown, but it's a nice trip.
It's a beautiful drive.
It's about 15 minutes, and it's out there. I saw the first article that I saw addressing something like this. We looked all over the place. It's not exactly convenient for me. It's not around the corner.
Yeah.
But, our resources are tapped here around where all the distilleries are. There's you've only got so much water. You've only got so much waste treatment plants that you have to factor in.
Yeah.
And then so it was really important to us where we were going to make this very green.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of things that I can't wait for us to disclose. Some new things, really revolutionary in the distillery end of it, the engineering side of it, that's going to be groundbreaking. So we're excited. And hopefully we look like we're on schedule by July of 2024. Those stills should be fired up, and we'll start fine tuning them.
Sweet. Before you know it, it'll be here. It's kind of crazy, like how time flies when you're talking about this, because the news came out early summer. Yeah, so it seems like it's been out for a while, but I mean, shoot, we're already at the end of summer. School started here locally, and football season's upon us. I had to talk about that. I probably won't talk about food. He talked about food already, so talk about football. Football season's upon us. I'm also talking to a fellow Kentucky fan, which is also great. So it'll be good. Season will go by. We'll do whatever we do for a few months, get to the March Madness, and then we'll have the Jefferson's distillery opening.
Yeah, you got it.
There it is.
You got it. That's the year.
That's the way I look at it. And my kid will be almost one by then. So, woohoo.
Man.
Yeah, that's about how it's going to be. Time flies when you're having fun. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk about, so we've hit on the distillery, but shifting focus just to take a viewpoint of career, right? We talked about this, but what's it mean to you to be, inducted by the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame? Like have you just sat back and thought about that?
So I haven't. The main reason that I have, or I should say the main reason, was there's a couple of things going on with this. One, I'm getting inducted with my dad, which is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
We had an interview earlier today and we were talking about it. He's in town right now for a short bit. So it's something that we started together. He was involved for maybe 2-3 years. And then he started writing books on bourbon and distilleries specifically. But it's a passion that we've been able to share for the last 25 years. We've traveled all over the place. We just got back from Singapore together. It's been a great road together. And it's one that we weren't really welcome into when we first came out. Campbell Brown, who inducted my dad or nominated my dad to get in, he always says, it was you guys that really kind of broke the mold of how most people do it now, which is sourcing and manipulating the spirit afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
When we started, there were those 8 distilleries that I mentioned earlier. Julian Van Winkle was selling a little bit. He was bottling up in his bottling line in Frankfurt. Evan Coolsveen was pumping away at their dilapidated distillery. They had a bottling line. That was our first bottler, actually.
Wow.
And he was selling probably 95% of his stuff over to Japan.
Wow.
And that was, I think that was it. So those two were kind of heritage brands because obviously Julian's family had a distillery, and obviously Evan married in to the Willets, and so they had their distillery. So they were kind of, okay, we're going to let you guys sustain, within the industry. And we came in, and it wasn't, they didn't welcome us with open arms. We got a couple of cease and desist letters within the first 30 days that we came out. We weren't welcome at the Bourbon Festival. So to kind of take that in mind and say, wow, we're actually, getting honored at this point, that, it does. It means a lot.
Yeah. It's like you finally have your seat. Like, they've, you've been a part of it for so long, but it's like, here you go, Trey.
You endured. Yeah. By this time, shit, let them in. Why not? They've been around this long. They're not going, we can't kill them off yet. It's like a bad wart. We just kept coming back.
But you have a distillery now to show for it. That, they can't take that away from you.
That's true. Once that's up, that's, it'll take a wrecking ball.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really cool just to be able to see that story, right? Like evolve and people engage into that experience. And you've taken them literally all around the world with your whiskey. I think some people are like, oh, this is gimmicky, whatever. And I'm just like, guys, like we make this huge deal about rick houses, and Busick makes these beautiful rick houses.
Yeah. And the Kentucky summers.
Yeah. So wouldn't it be interesting if your bottle went to Antarctica? Like, what does that do? Like, and they're like, oh, well, then they get all technical. Well, it went into suspension. Well, it went into suspension, and then it went right into the freaking Indian Ocean where it's 110 degrees. Like,
right.
That's called shock. Like,
shock and awe.
Exactly. But like that, I think that's what people don't realize is like, we make a big deal about age here in Kentucky in the summer, but like shocking the whiskey and doing that, you all were kind of the precursor to experimenting what whiskey was when you literally put it around the world. And so what's it like to kind of see that voyage experience now? I don't know. I think are you in the 30s yet?
Yeah, we're on voyage 30. I think it's kind of like what I said about blending earlier.
Yeah.
We were blenders before anybody else was blending, and it was a dirty word in the industry. And people found out that we were blending, and, we got looked down their noses because of that. And now,
now it's
blending's the gold, that's.
Yeah.
And, when we first came out with Ocean, you're right. A lot of people said, no, that's a gimmick. And, we've sent it off to labs and had it broken down molecularly and, have 300-page reports telling you what happened. Shit, I reenacted how to take whiskey from Kentucky and send it down on the rivers and around Florida and up. And, it's really where whiskey turned into bourbon for the first time. That's when it was put in barrels for the first time. And we tried to do it as historically accurate as possible. And we put new fill on that voyage. And by the time it landed in New York, a year to the date that we took off, it was as dark as a 16-year-old that I double barreled for 5 years. Shit's no joke. It really changed it. So if you're talking about, Warehouse W on the 7th floor is that's the magic spot.
The north-facing side,
with the cool stiff breeze that it always gets from the holler.
Right. So if that's really making a difference, we'll try something that is when we send out on most ocean voyages, we're going down to the Tasmanian Sea near Antarctica, all the way up to the North Sea, up in Europe, Scandinavian countries. And we're crossing the equator a few times. So that makes one hell of a difference. And it really is, to me, what I've seen more than anything, because I've hidden barrels all over the damn place. First, a lot of people will say 65 to 80% of what bourbon is, or the heart and soul of bourbon, comes from the maturation process. So a lot of, when we got into it, and this is the first thing I saw, I don't know how to distill, but I see that everybody's aging it the same way.
Yeah.
So what if we look at different ways of aging it? And if that's where all the flavor's coming from, one, let's experiment with the barrels, because at the time, 85% of the barrels were all char 3 barrels.
Yeah.
And then I went and became a barrel chef at Independent Staves home office, not in Kentucky, but in Missouri. And they work with barrels they've got cooperages all over the world. And I saw what all these winemakers were doing from all over the world and all these different techniques. Like, why are we so rudimentary in Kentucky that we're not utilizing all this knowledge that these people have come to the table with? So one, all right, we can still keep it a new charred white oak barrel. Why don't we manipulate it in different ways?
Yeah.
Two, why don't we take it to different places? Why don't we agitate it? You're able to, and then finishings. We've been finishing things since, I think, 2012. So there's a lot of different variables that you can put in and do. And when we started manipulating where we were aging it, it really made a big difference.
Yeah.
My dad's a bourbon historian. As I say, he's written the most boring book ever 5 times. Because he keeps doing new editions, but it is the encyclopedia for distilleries. But he's got a couple interesting chapters in there that really tell you, it's all practical.
Yeah.
Why Kentucky? All right. There's the stories of down the river. Okay, why age it the way that you age it? That's not how it used to be aged, but it's practical.
Yep.
Store right. It's expensive to move these things. Buildings are cheaper going high than they are wide. You don't have to buy much. Oh, okay. Well, that's practical and it seemed to work. We're going to tell a great story about limestone because we've got limestone water. But the limestone shelf goes from Georgia up to Maine.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great limestone water, and we can talk about
it's like Kentucky limestone.
Right. And when they started distilling, on the western edge of the Appalachian Mountains, because they didn't want to pay taxes.
Yep.
Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee. What do they have in common? Shitty climates. Great for aging bourbon, though.
Yeah.
So it's a good marketing point.
We're going to say, all right, you know what? This is the best damn place to age it. And, we do have great water.
Yeah.
We do have shitty weather.
Yeah.
As
we
just
experienced. Right now.
Yeah.
You don't like it, wait 5 minutes, it's going to change.
Yeah.
And, it's a good story that we've all told each other. But is it the end all be all? Maybe this has worked really well, but there's different things that you can take from different places.
Yep.
Like utilizing that New York water. Now, I don't know what it would do to distill it out of there, but to cut it, it certainly changed it. And it drank more like a Scotch style whiskey than a bourbon. I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying it's different. And so there's so many different variables. Okay, so you age it. Breckenridge Distillery in Colorado is the highest distillery. Okay. What does that do to it? Well, there's some things that might be better than others. In a warehouse, sometimes proof goes up, sometimes it goes down. So certain areas that you have the water burning off first, other the alcohol burns off first. Well, if you want to have a hazmat barrel, why don't you take it to an environment that's going to go ahead and
take it up there?
You got it.
Yeah.
So that's why I've started throwing barrels around different places, and I'm seeing what's happening with that. Now, we're using Kentucky grains and water and, our distilleries here, and then to date, always fully mature bourbon before I'm sending it out. But we'll continue to play around with those.
Well, just make sure it's aged at least 1 year in Kentucky, and then you can send it anywhere. Can still call it Kentucky bourbon. Hey, use the rules of the law for your own good. So that's one of the things I was wondering. So obviously on a ship, it's in a steel container, right? Or maybe below deck. I think the first original ones were
they were on the deck, and now they're in container ships, in containers, on container ship, contracted to be on the very top of the bow of the ship.
Okay.
So it gets as much pitch as possible. And then we've cut sunroofs in them, so they're getting rained upon, snowed upon, beaten on by the sun.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the interesting thing. So like steel versus wood, obviously you've made more breathability, and for the ones that you've kind of hodgepodged, and this is my segue into Tropics. Thanks for doing this for me. Are the barrels that have landed in other spots around the world, such as Tropics Singapore, that is going to be released soon and will be out by the time this podcast airs. Is that aging in a steel container, or is that moved to some open air or wood, or what's that situation like?
Okay, so one, as you said, the open air, and I think that exposure really is significant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're talking about different areas within a warehouse. Was it Taylor Tornado Bourbon?
Yeah, the one that got knocked down by the
Tornado Survivor.
Yeah. Was that Old Taylor?
E.H. Taylor. Yeah.
E.H. Taylor. Tornado.
All right. So what did that do? That exposed those barrels to the elements.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of what we do by putting those sunroofs in there. What we've done with Tropics in Singapore, and what that is what I have found is that aging these barrels for a significant amount of time in hot, humid locations, what you're really doing is slow cooking the wood, caramelizing the sugars, and you're getting the good part out of the wood. It makes it very textured, very rich. And so we took mature Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, put it in containers, shipped it down to Savannah, went through the Panama Canal, across the Pacific to Singapore. We put half of the barrels, left them out in the yard, the harbor, in the containers with the sunroofs in them, and the other half went into a non-climate controlled warehouse. And we left them there I think it was 9 containers, 11 containers. We left all but one of them there. We took 18 out we took all but one out after 18 months. We left one there for 22 months. And I lost a hell of a lot to evaporation.
I'm sure.
That was a disappointing part of it, but what came out was beautifully rich, textured, sweet, kind of apple pie, just beautiful flavors.
Did that just make your mouth water like it did mine?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. Just making sure we're on the same page.
Apple pie and bourbon.
Sign me up. It just kind of reminds me of Miss Mary May. What was her name? Miss
Bobo.
Miss Bobo. Yeah, Miss Mary Bobo down there. She just on their apple slices they just poured whiskey on top of it afterwards because they can't pour a whiskey down there. So that's really interesting. Just seasoning, like utilizing the barrel in a different way, like using it as a cooker. Right, because what you're trying to get out is all those vanillins and different compounds that are there, so the flavor is going to extrapolate more. What'd you see from a proof point perspective? Did you see
it dropped a little bit? It was down to 118 proof. Okay. I cut it to 104 because I think that's where you're getting the maximum amount of flavor without getting too much astringency on there. Drink's really great on that. I drink almost everything with a big rock, so I love it. The way that comes together.
Yeah.
But we lost a little proof, but not significant.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting because you're getting that high humidity in Singapore. I'm decent with geography in the Middle East or in the Pacific East, to me, west to some, Singapore is south of China.
It is. It's 85 miles from the equator.
Okay. So similar climate to like Taiwanese whiskey.
Correct.
Okay. So that's what I was thinking in my head because I've had Kavalan.
Oh, yeah.
Which is an excellent whiskey. And so like trying to see like I'm interested to like maybe go pick up a bottle of that and a bottle of this and see like what the climate.
Try them against each other over there.
Yeah.
And it was all climate. I mean, it was amazing. I was told while I was over there, I didn't know this for sure, but they've never bottled anything over 5 years.
Wow.
And I think it's twofold. One is because you get so much extraction. As I said, that one container I left there for 22 months, I think that was too long to be over there. You always get an apex, and that was a little longer. So, and two, you're losing a lot to evaporation. Yep. So it's a combination of the two. But, they've won all those awards with that young distillery.
Yeah.
In a world of Scotch-style whiskey that, until it hits 12-year-old, it's not drinkable in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah.
And at 5 years old, it's winning Whiskey of the Year.
Yeah.
Why? It's the same reason that they said that they can't make Scotch-style whiskey in Taiwan is what made it so damn good.
Yeah.
Now, what's probably a little bit different there than what we have here, we'll talk about the water source again. What kind of water source do you get in a hot, humid climate?
Yeah.
You're not, there's no rock filtering in those areas.
No.
I don't know about Taiwan for sure, but there's no actual natural water in Singapore. So, people say, well, you could take this down to Florida. I don't want anything, you got to take it where it's so hot and humid every day of the year.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and I think that's a really interesting thing. Like, 'cause you see Taiwanese whiskey, Indian whiskey, right? And Texas, in the southwest region of Texas, right? That is just unbearably hot.
Yeah.
All the damn time. Or unbearably cold. And that's why I say the Southwest, because like in India, you get huge temperature swings, especially in the mountains.
Right. Depends where you are in India.
Yeah. And so it's really interesting to see these weird climate places start to experiment, but it's, 4 years, 5 years tops. And they're like 99%'s gone.
Look how dark it is too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting some work in there. That stuff's just swelling out in there.
Yeah.
You don't have it coming in and out as much, but it's swelling in there. Mm-hmm. Those are some swollen barrels.
Well, and so
that's the other thing. Maybe we're only losing so much to evaporation and so much more is being absorbed by the barrel.
Yeah. And so did you go with a standard, like I'm just going to say toasted barrel, char 3 kind of deal?
We did. No, char 3.
Straight char 3.
Char 3, about 5 years of age here before sending it out.
Well, and that's what I would be interested in is like, what happens if you do a char 1?
Yeah.
Right. And what does that do with the swelling? Right. Like, I think that would be the interesting, like, kind of innovation is if you toast, like heavy toast char 1, just get a little bit on it.
Yeah.
And then let that go at it.
Absolutely.
Would you lose the same amount of liquid? Would you be able to get the full flavor? Like those are the things I think that you all can experiment with now.
Right. And char 4, a lot of times you don't want char 4 because it masks those secondary flavors. Well, if it's exploding in deeper, maybe those come through. Who knows?
Yeah.
But, toasting, there's a lot of different things that you can experiment with.
Just getting all the data points.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just the cool part.
And that's what we're able to do. And that's what we've done with the Ocean Forever. We're able to get, whether it's calm, moderate, rough, or super rough, on daily. So we're able to track it. And so the more data that we can accumulate, the more you can sit back. I might not be a distiller, but I can look at those things and say, all right, here's what's going on here.
And do you all get like an average temperature for the day? Like
we do on the Ocean,
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. I'm nerdy about those things because just being in Rick House, like we were in one last week. It's hot as shit on the 7th floor.
Super hot. Golly.
Damn, this time of year it is.
Yeah, it was miserable.
And they said it was actually pretty cool. And I was like, oh, okay.
All the warehouse workers, they lose a lot of weight during the summer.
I need that job right about now. I put on the pregnancy weight with my wife.
It happens.
But I think that's the one thing that's really interesting is I think we've just hit the cusp of barrel experimentation.
So you were going back to talking about when we're getting started in this. Every little different thing that we did was at a time that the consumer was not really ready for it. Now there's a lot of people doing a lot of different things, and we've got an educated bourbon consumer that wants to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why it's tasting the way it does happen. Mm-hmm. So, if we would have done a lot of these things years ago, it would have fallen on deaf ears. And now there's, hey, wait, okay, I can understand that. What if you push it? What if you bring different barrels into it? What if you bring it to a different altitude? What if it was a dry area? If it was hot and dry, worse, humid and dry. There's a lot of different factors that are going to make a big difference.
Well, and I'm sure the big guys are paying attention too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's evident that even the big guys are jumping into let's talk about the different rick houses or the different cities of where we're aging things and the elevation and rick house names. And
that's cute. These small guys were doing that. Now, they've jumped in and really, it was a tail wagging the dog for the industry.
You can invite them to your table.
You know what? I got a lot of respect for them all, and it was one thing to endure during that whole period. And those that did, they carried the torch and laid
kept
the
lights
foundation.
on.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like we wouldn't have this, renaissance if it wasn't for people still pumping out daily drinkers.
Right, and and that's what I always say. There's plenty of daily drinkers out there.
Yeah,
if you don't like what we're doing, you got rows and rows and rows of bottles to choose from.
Yeah. And it's not just beholden to Kentucky, but even though Kentucky bourbon is the best bourbon, it is Bourbon Heritage Month. I got to do that.
Yeah, of course.
So, we've talked about the distillery. We've talked about this new Tropics that's coming. What more is on the horizon for Jefferson's?
Well, we just came out with something that was kind of a nod to our past with our Marion McLean bottling, which was my 8th generation grandmother who was the first person on record in the American whiskey business by her arrest records. So I blended 5 different bourbons to kind of pay homage to her 5 children. And, that was kind of going back and saying, hey, we've been blenders from day one. Yep. This is what we've been doing. So we'll continue to come out with a new kind of blend or putting something unique together every year for that.
Oh, that's nice.
As we've hinted, there might be some other barrels in other places that have really different results from where they've aged coming out. Obviously, we're very excited about not only the distillery, but the visitor center that we're putting up in Lebanon. As I said, it's going to be the greenest distillery ever built. And we're in Lebanon, which I think is going to be a great stop, around some great distilleries, and we had Independent Stave Company, who's been one of our great partners for years.
Yep.
So we're going to continue to push boundaries and peel back the onion, and where it seems like it works, keep peeling more on that side and seeing how far we can go until it doesn't get better. Then I've got plenty of failed experiments, and that's part of it.
Yeah. I mean, we get that. We were just when we were at Jack, we looked over and someone found like a 10-year-old barrel, and Chris Fletcher looked at us and he's like, "Yeah, y'all don't want to drink that."
Yeah. It didn't work so well.
They just don't want to take it out of the rick house.
Yeah, he's like,
that might be good too.
He's like, "I just wanted to heat up more in here."
Yeah, wait till it empties, and then it'll be easier to carry out.
Yeah, that was basically the
it might have been his kid.
Yeah, and so I think that's exciting that there is more that's coming out from a whiskey perspective, because it's always fun to try different things and be a part of tasting them and experimenting with them and engaging with them. One of the other things that I would say is you're also Jefferson's and is big investment into Bourbon and Beyond and engaging in that community. Are you a big music fan?
No, yeah, I love music.
Yeah.
I'm actually going out next week to do something at Red Rocks with Nathaniel Radcliffe. And
oh, awesome.
I went to school in New Orleans and had this great porch in college where 7 of the 8 of us played guitar and many other instruments, and I was the 8th. I was in the bongos and on the bongos in the corner.
Nice.
But we would play with some great musicians that would just stop and pop up and play on our porch.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're excited, to experience Bourbon and Beyond again this year, and you all had us out last year, and you all had having us out again this year. So we're excited to enjoy music and take in some Jefferson's bourbon. We will be drinking bourbon. It's Bourbon Heritage Month.
Yeah,
and enjoy some good music because it's a hell of a lineup this year. Bourbon and Beyond,
great lineup.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Danny does a hell of a job. He's done it since he brought this here, and each year when the lineup comes out, I get excited.
Yeah. And then my last question for you, so we've covered the gamut of looking back, talking about the present and the honoring and looking towards the future. If you could think about one thing that kind of got you from A to B, right, to today, what's been the word or kind of phrase that you've lived by to get to 97, 96 being new kids on the block and getting those cease and desist to now being inducted? What's been the kind of word or phrase you've lived by during that time?
Gosh, it would, don't be scared. Don't be scared. Evolve. Don't be married to one business plan that, this is, it's an ever-changing consumer.
Yeah.
Which is great because, as I said earlier, a lot of these things, nobody would care. A double-barreled rye that's gone on the ocean. 10 years ago, why would you do that?
10 years ago, people would probably say, "What's rye?"
Right. They would have. A good story on that. David Perkins, who started High West.
Yeah.
We had a mutual friend. He said, "Trey, will you help David source some things?" And told him where to get everything from bottles to, it's like, I really like rye. I think I'm going to, David, nobody drinks rye. People that drink rye have one foot in the grave. And I called him the day after it was announced that he sold, and I'm like, "Congratulations. I'm glad you didn't listen." Like, me too.
Yeah.
I missed that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. No, but I think don't be scared is a great motto. And you couldn't be, right? To get from where you were ruffling feathers to, partnering with one of the largest beverage distillers or beverage manufacturers in the world, to creating a state-of-the-art distillery. While it may have taken a long road to hoe, it is definitely something that I think the bourbon community has accepted, and that you are now firmly planted at the table with the heritage brands that do make up Kentucky bourbon and whiskey, because you've been around just as long as they have.
I don't know if we've been around as long as they have, but it's to be able to modern be mentioned times. In the same breath as some of those guys. It's a hell of an honor.
Yeah. So, Scott, you got anything else? I mean, you.
No, I'm glad we could catch up. It's been a while, so it's been fun. And
yeah, it's always fun to catch up, and it's always fun to drink some whiskey and talk to people that have been doing this a long time. So congratulations on your induction to the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame along with your dad, and to all the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Famers. As always, you can find out more about Jefferson's on Instagram and all the social medias. They have a great presence on social media. I don't know who does your all's work, but they take some great pictures. They do a great job making you all look good.
Local photographer, Andrew Kong, who's out today taking some. He does great work.
Yeah.
So love to plug him as well.
Oh, for sure.
And congratulations to you guys. 5 years.
Yeah. 5 years. Yeah. Can't believe it. Scott's put up with my bullshit for 5 years.
Bullshit will take you a long way.
Yeah, it will. It will, definitely.
About 6 years worth of bullshit in 5 years.
Yep, probably. That's why I had to kick two other podcasters to the curb along the way. But hey, Trey, we really appreciate it. As always, thanks everyone for listening to this episode of the Bourbon Lens. You can find more about Bourbon Lens on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you want to join our growing Patreon community, go over to patreon.com/Bourbon Lens to join one of our Patreon memberships. And as always, please go and subscribe to our podcast so that you can get the weekly update, and give us a 5-star review if you have a chance. Until next time, cheers.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.